Are Russian cases hard for you? Do you struggle to understand when to use them? Find the endings hard to memorize, or just struggle with the concept in general? After living in Russia for 2 years and then teaching it for 3 years, I finally figured out a better way to learn cases. My method makes learning and using cases correctly insanely easy. In this video, I'm going to show you my method of learning the cases, and using this system will make mastering the cases easier, helping you to speak Russian faster. Давайте начнем. Всем привет, меня зовут Jared, и я делаю русский язык легким. When I was in the 7th grade, my English teacher sent me to the principal's office for goofing off and playing with my friends rather than listening to her. We were diagramming sentences and calling out all these different words and what their grammar principles were in the sentences, and I was bored to death. And I still am not a grammar guru. And that's one thing that I think a lot of students struggle with when they hit the cases, because when they get explained, hey, what are Russian cases? Everyone goes right into the English grammar trying to teach it. So in essence, you have to learn Russian cases through the firewall of English grammar. There's almost 2 barriers to overcome there. I'm going to start the video by explaining what Russian cases are without using any of that English grammar. And then we're going to get to my system of how do we actually learn the cases. In simple terms, cases are endings to words that provide context and meaning to those words in the sentence. Now, I know that's kind of a mouthful and you're probably still scratching your head and like, what? Let me give you some examples in English here that I think will help you better understand it. Let's take the English sentence, I saw the girl. We understand that I, meaning me, I saw someone, I saw a girl. And we understand that because of word order. I saw the girl. We wouldn't say girl saw I. That would almost imply that the girl saw me with just some incorrect grammar. Well, in Russian, they don't have word order. You can say, I girl saw. Or girl saw I. Now, it wouldn't flow quite as well in Russian, but you could say that. And that's because of the ending they add to girl. That tells the listener who saw who. So that's one example. Here's another example for you. She wrote the book with a pencil. Now in Russian, they do have the word with, it's the letter S, but in this case, they wouldn't use that. They would use one of the cases, or they would add endings to the word pencil to indicate how she wrote the book. You could also say she book wrote with pencil, or she pencil book wrote. All of that would make sense in Russian because of the different endings that you would put on book and pencil. It would indicate to the reader what was done, or what was written, in this case, the book, and how it was written, in this case, with the pencil. So let me give you that definition of cases again and keep both of those English examples in mind here and see if it makes more sense to you. Cases are just endings to words that add context and meaning to those words in the sentence. That's the non-grammar way of explaining what a case is. This then leads to the reason as to why you've struggled so long to learn Russian cases. Normally, when these concepts are taught in a traditional educational system, they're kind of piecemealed out to you. They'll say, okay, today we're going to learn how to say how old I am. And they'll say, in that case, you need the dative case. Or they might say, today we're going to learn how to say where I work or what I do for a living. And then they'll go into, in that case, we need the instrumental case. And then they might teach you that little concept there. Or they might say, today we're going to learn how to show possession. We're going to learn how to say it's Sasha's book. They don't have the apostrophe S like we do. And so they'll be like, for that little part, you need the genitive case. Or they might come in and say, okay, today we're learning the verb stat, which means to become. And when you use the verb stat, you need the instrumental case. And what happens as you go throughout your Russian learning career, every little piece of the case gets piecemealed to you. There's a little bit added here, a little bit added there. You end up with a long, unorganized list of uses for cases that include exceptions and exceptions to exceptions. And it gets very overwhelming very fast. And then on top of all of this, they dribble in the endings. They give you part of the endings here and part of the endings there and a little bit more over here. How is your brain, how is your mind supposed to put all of this together and use it and push it out while you're speaking? You have to pull from a million different areas to try and figure out the sentence that you want to actually say. It's just a huge, complicated mess. These are the struggles that I was going through when I learned Russian. And then one day while I was teaching Russian, I'd given out an assignment and the students were working, and this one student raised his hand, so I walked over to help him. And I could tell he was just frustrated with the whole language in general. And he asked me this question. And the way that he asked it, I could see perfectly that he was struggling with the exact same thing that I was struggling with when I learned Russian. And something happened in my head. Something just snapped. It became clear to me. And I said, listen, this is what you need to know. I laid it out at a very high level. I said, this is what you need to know about this case. Boom, 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 boom. The next day he came back in and he just said, man, that really clicked for me. That really works. I get what we're doing. I get why we're learning it. And now it's all puzzle pieced together. It's making sense. That doesn't mean he mastered the case overnight, but what happened as I gave out more pieces to the case, he knew how it fit in, and he could plug that into the puzzle piece and then move on and master the case a lot faster than the other students could. So let me tell you what I told him. The first thing that you're going to want to learn about cases is the endings, and quite often these get dribbled out. So here's what you need to know about the endings. You need to know the endings for the singular nouns. For the plural nouns, you need to learn the endings for adjectives, and then you need to learn the endings for the personal pronouns. Now, that's a lot of grammar, but those are the three main areas. If you go Google those or look those up, then you'll be able to find those. I've also got a free resource that I'm just about done, and I'm just about ready to give you guys. So subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and that'll come out in a future video, and I'll tell you how you can go to my website and download those there, but all the endings are going to be there. Okay, that's the first thing that you need to understand about cases is what are the endings, those three areas. Okay, and learning the rest of the case can be broken down into four major areas. The first is the part of speech that's required for that case. Now, that's a lot of grammar. Remember, 7th grade, don't like grammar. Now, the easiest way that I can teach what that actually means without going into all these different cases and overwhelming you here is take an English sentence, for example. I saw her. We don't say I saw she, right? We say I saw her. And we say her because it's the indirect object. Now, I know that's grammar. Don't be overwhelmed with that. Just know that that's what we're talking about there. And again, when I teach these cases, and they'll be coming out in future videos, so again, subscribe if you haven't, but I don't teach them using those grammar terms. I have different methods for teaching them, and I think that are easier for you to understand, and then, of course, put them out there. Hey, you guys, real quick, if you're learning anything, smash that like button. I'd appreciate it. Spasiba. The second thing you're going to want to learn is what verbs require this case. Not all, but almost all of the cases have a certain list of verbs that require that case. So when you use the verb, you have to use that case for the thing. So if we wanted to say, "Я стал профессором," I became a professor. The verb stat, like I mentioned earlier, to become, requires the prepositional case. So I just learned that, okay, stat, anytime I say stat, I'm going to need the prepositional case. To me, it's easier to learn the list of verbs and know that they require a certain case than every time I learn a verb, have to learn what case it goes to. Now, granted, there's a billion different verbs out there, but if you learn the main ones, the ones that are used the most, you learn the top 15 or 20, you're going to be so much farther ahead. And then adding verbs as you progress in your Russian education will be a lot easier. The third item is, are there any prepositions that require the case? Certain prepositions require the use of certain cases. So if you wanted to say, I am sitting on the table, let's say I was on the table, you'd say, "Я сижу на столе." Okay? The preposition na requires the prepositional case when it's on something, okay? Now, don't memorize these right now. We're just learning concepts. Now, there aren't as many prepositions as there are verbs, and so learning these is a lot easier. The last item is what I call special uses. Again, not every case, but most of the cases will be required at different times. And these are just things that you have to learn. But if you learn them ahead of time, you're not learning all of these exceptions. Let me give you one example here. Possession. If we wanted to say that it's Sasha's book, right? We put an apostrophe S on to show that the book belongs to Sasha. In Russian, what they do is they put Sasha into the genitive case. When talking about age, how old I am, that requires the dative case. I say to me is so many years, okay? Now, there aren't a huge number of special uses for each case. In fact, I think the genitive has the most, and there's probably 5. All the other cases have just like 1 or 2. It's not that hard to learn. But do you see what we're doing here is we're learning the case, we're learning the special uses, and it all flows together in kind of like one block of learning, rather than learning all these different dialogues. And okay, when you're saying this, you need this case. And when you need that, you need that case. It just gets very overwhelming and very confusing. So what you want to do is learn the cases as I've outlined here. First, learn the endings, then learn the special grammar principles, then learn any verbs that go with that case, learn any prepositions that go with that case, and then learn the special uses that go with that case. You will learn the cases so much faster, and using them, again, when you speak, will be so much easier. It won't be as choppy. It'll be a lot more fluid. Now, if you feel like you have a good understanding of what the cases are and you're ready to learn cases, I would highly recommend that you subscribe to my channel. I'm going to start a series here where we're going to talk about every single case, and we're going to go through each one of these areas for each of the cases. If you want to jump into one case right now, I recommend you start with the prepositional case. It's the easiest one to learn, and I've already got a few videos out on it. The first one I'll put right up here, so go check that out now. Spasiba i увидимся.